Have you ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, God has a special kind of love, a particular focus for the most vulnerable people in our world? Well, today we're diving into a really powerful idea that says exactly that. It's a concept that kind of challenges us to rethink our own priorities and see the world through a whole new lens.
So let's start way back with these ancient words from the book of Revelation. They were spoken to a community that had, well, pretty much no power. They were totally overlooked. But the message they got wasn't pity. It was this incredible, profound declaration of love. This one little verse really sets the stage for everything we're going to talk about.
And here's the main event, the preferential option for the poor. Now, this phrase first came out of the Latin American church, specifically at the Puebla Assembly, but it's since been woven right into the fabric of broader church teaching. And it's super important to get this right. It doesn't mean God loves other people less. It just highlights this special compassion for our shared human weakness, something that's just way more visible in those who are suffering. To really get our heads around this idea, we can't just start in the 20th century. Nope, we've got to go on a journey, way back, thousands of years into the Old Testament, to see where this powerful idea first planted its roots. And you know what? It all starts with a cry for help. Just look at how active this is. Notice the verbs. I have observed, I have heard, I have come down to deliver. This isn't some distant passive feeling. The source material makes it clear this is a God who gets involved, who sees the suffering, who hears the cry of the oppressed, and who literally steps into history to do something about it. And this theme, it just becomes this constant, thundering refrain from the prophets. Guys like Amos and Isaiah were hammering this point home over and over again. You can't separate true worship from social justice. They warned that all the religious rituals in the world mean absolutely nothing if the weakest people in your society are being crushed. It's an argument that's thousands of years old, but you can hear it echoing in justice movements even today. Real belief has to show up in how you treat the vulnerable. So this ancient principle has been building and building, but it doesn't just stay as an abstract idea or a bunch of rules. It finds its ultimate living, breathing expression in a person, Jesus Christ. The concept literally becomes flesh and blood. This just illustrates how radical that choice was. St. Paul calls it a divine exchange. I mean, think about that for a second. The contrast is just staggering, going from the unimaginable richness of a divine nature to the deep poverty of human existence. Choosing our fragility, choosing to be a slave, also that through his poverty, we could become rich. It's mind-blowing. And this wasn't just some philosophical stance. It defined his whole life. His poverty was totally intentional. It starts with his birth, literally no room for him. Then he lives as a tekton, which isn't just a carpenter, it means a craftsman with no land, no property, no real security. He becomes a traveling teacher with no permanent home. And finally, he dies the death of an outcast outside the city walls. This threat of poverty was absolutely central to who he was and what he came to do. So right at the start of his public work, this is basically his mission statement. Jesus stands up and declares his purpose. And who is his number one audience? He says he was anointed specifically to bring good news to the poor. That's the heart of his mission. Okay, so hearing all this talk about a preference naturally brings up a pretty important question. It's a question the theology itself addresses directly, so let's just tackle it head on. And here's the question in its simplest form. If God shows a preference for the poor, does that mean God is discriminating against people who aren't poor? Is this some kind of zero-sum game? And the answer really clearly is no. The source material is emphatic about this. This preference isn't about excluding anyone. It's about expressing compassion for our shared human fragility, a fragility that's just most exposed in the lives of the poor. So the goal isn't to build walls and divide people, it's to build a kingdom of justice and solidarity that's so strong and includes everyone, starting with those who've been pushed to the edges. So we've traced this idea from its earliest roots all the way to its ultimate expression. What's the takeaway? How does this theological concept actually connect to our lives, right now, in the world we see all around us? This famous verse, well, it changes everything. It takes the preferential option for the poor from this big abstract idea and makes it a direct, personal encounter. It tells us that how we treat the most marginalized, the least of these, is exactly how we're treating God. It's that simple and that profound. And so, this is where we'll end. This whole concept isn't just an interesting piece of theology. It's a lens. It's a powerful way of looking at our relationships, our society, and our own actions. The final question isn't for me to answer. It's for you to think about. How does knowing this change the way you see the world and every single person in it?